Hey everyone, welcome. And today we are going to be reviewing Tron Ares. Alrighty, so I guess I'll have to give you some backstory about this movie. This movie was announced a while back, like there was rumors and speculation as far back, I want to say back in 2016, if not probably closer to 2019, there was speculation that there would be a third Tron movie. Now, the first two movies that came out was the first Tron movie, which came out in 1982, and its sequel, which came out many years later in 2010, being Tron Legacy, along with the TV show Tron Uprising and a video game, which I haven't played the video game. I remember my dad used to play when I was a little kid, and I haven't seen Tron Uprising, but I've heard really good things about it. And if you want to know what I think about the first and the second Tron movies, I really like both of them. They didn't really do financially good at the box office, and they're kind of a very niche realm in terms of science fiction and have their own kind of cult-like following. In recent years, people have really grown to like Tron Legacy, I think primarily in part because of the Daft Punk soundtrack, but this movie was announced and it had Nine Inch Nails composing the soundtrack. And it stars a very infamous and controversial actor, Jared Leto, who has been known for various roles, including Blade Runner 2049, and what many would view as the worst rendition of the Joker in 2016 Suicide Squad, along with his cameo in Zack Snyder's Justice League in 2021. Greta Lee, whose filmography is kind of small as far as I'm aware, but like her biggest role I was able to see is, which I've been meaning to watch. I've heard really great things about it. Jeff Bridges, who returns in his third appearance of this series. Jodie Turner-Smith, whose work I haven't seen too much of. I think this is her breakout debut role, along with her appearance in The Acolyte, the controversial Star Wars miniseries. And Evan Peters, who plays Julian Dillinger, who played Quicksilver in the X-Men films, as well as Todd in Kick-Ass. He's meant to play kind of like of the open source software ChatGPT, kind of something like that. That's his appearance kind of reminded me of that. And Julian Anderson. Now you might be noticing I'm only focusing on 6 actors, but that's because those are the only real characters that you really need to pay attention and really care for. There are other characters in here in this film I thought were kind of one note, very one-dimensional, and they weren't really as interesting. Like, this cast is very expansive and pretty big, but you don't really have a lot of characters that you really remember besides, of course, Jared Leto's character Ares and Eve Kim. So the whole plot essentially kind of takes elements of Tron Legacy that the programs want to inhabit the real world, but Julian Dillinger wants to create a new super weapon for the military by bringing programs in the real world for military purposes, and views them as nothing more than just pawns in a game. But they can only be alive for 29 minutes at a time, and NCOM, Eve Kim's company, finds a piece of source code that's in the original Tron arcade cabinet that will allow programs to stay in the real world as long as possible. Ares wants to sort of learn what it means to be human. It's kind of a similar plot point as Tron Legacy, but it kind of gives elements, I guess, of Blade Runner. At least it tries to a little. And Ares slowly turns against his creator, Julian Dillinger, and Julian doesn't like this. So he authorizes Athena to terminate him, in addition to getting the code to destroy NCOM. Some shenanigans happen with them trying to get the source code, and eventually at the end, NCOM is the one that's victorious and gets the source code, and Julian Dillinger is surrounded by the FBI after trying to assassinate Eve Kim's character. Ares learns essentially what it means to kind of be human. That's the basic plot, but as I said, it's really kind of real world, mediocre, and it kind of feels kind of Sam's boring, character from Tron Legacy. Now, you notice I'm kind of talking about like an overall summary is very short. That's because this movie is not very memorable. It was kind of hard to follow. When I say it wasn't hard to follow, it wasn't like super complicated. It was just very boring, very mediocre by the numbers. It felt very generic, this whole plot. Like, It kind of felt like what Tron Legacy was trying to do, but really dumbed it down. And I think the biggest thing that really held it back was it didn't have Sam Flynn's character or Cora from that film series. I think if those characters were in this film as the main protagonist, it would have made things way more interesting, way better, in my opinion. And like I said, the soundtrack was pretty decent for what it was. You're never gonna get the Daft Punk sound, but if there's a close second, Trent Reznor is always very good, and he definitely does a great job of what he's given in this film. I would say for me, the biggest thing that kind of holds it back is I felt like they were trying to cram a lot in, but not giving us enough really heavy interest or investment in these characters. What do I mean? They're trying to do this big story, which could have been very much shorter, but they dragged it out for a very long time. It was a slog. It wasn't terrible, but this movie, for being almost 2 hours long, felt like it was like maybe 3. It felt very long. And the action set pieces are fine in the real world, but it just wasn't as interesting as what it was in Tron and Tron Legacy. Now, those movies do have boring moments, but they're at least very entertaining, and they give you something of narrative value. Now, do I think this is the worst movie of the series? Absolutely. This is easily the worst one. Now, there have been accusations of it being quote-unquote woke and all that stuff. And I'm not going to play politics on here, as that's not what my channel is about. Can I see some people's perspective on it? Sure. Do I think it's really relevant at the end of the day about the story and anything? Maybe, maybe not. But my point is, the story is very, very boring. Cinematography was pretty well done. You know, it kind of kept the visual flair, what made Tron Legacy interesting. But when it gets to towards the end of the movie, when Ares meets Kevin Flynn's program, they kind of emulate the style from the first Tron movie, which I thought was very clever, but I didn't really like it. Not for, it's gonna sound dumb, it just didn't feel like as authentic as it was in that original movie. It sounds dumb, but that's the only way I can describe it. The one thing I thought they were gonna do was try to introduce Master Program as the main bad guy for this film and have him as the main antagonist of the story. Like, that's what I thought it was gonna be for this movie, but they didn't even mention him at all, which is fine, I guess, but it was really not interesting, very lackluster. This film is definitely what I hate to say it without sounding weird, it's a Walmart bin type of movie. Like, something you might throw in a Walmart bin, might entertain you for a little bit, but it's not very outstanding for what it does. It's very mediocre and boring. Now, as you can tell by my voice, what would I rate this movie? I would give it a 3 out of 10 if I want to be really sadistic and really pedantic, but they definitely did try. Like, Eve Kim's motivation, I think, kind of saved it for me, like, because she's trying to help live up to her sister's legacy, even though she doesn't want to, but she feels an obligation to have to because, like, she loves her sister, which I thought that was a very strong motivation, but I think it could have been fleshed out way more. This movie overall, with the way it's told, it's very boring, very mediocre, and it has a lot of mediocrity to it. I did know this movie nuked at the box office, and I can totally understand why. But if I had to be honest, like I said, 3 out of 10 is unfair. I think for this, I would probably give it around a 4 out of 10. It's not terrible, but it's definitely very mediocre, and it's very slow. It's a slog. There were some redeeming elements to it, but I don't think it was enough to save it from the Walmart bin, as I like to say. But what would you rate this movie? Let me know in the comment sections down below, and I hope to see you soon.